every single week. We're also again going to have amazing speakers coming on. So with that, we do have today's speaker, which you guys got a sneak peek, but today's speaker is Andrew Can.
Hello, hello, hello.
Andrew is, oh my gosh, your repertoire background, massive. I love it. Andrew is like a YouTube wizard, has a great background, worked at Disney, gained them like 20 million subscribers, was the director of TubeBuddy for video production, and now also has his own business teaching others how to grow on YouTube. So let's get some W's in chat for Andrew because this, I am so excited, especially a lot of us are struggling with long form content, YouTube content. So this is where Andrew is going to step in to help us out. So first up, Andrew, a big one is YouTube analytics. And
Sure,
this is
sure.
something that like a lot of creators struggle with, but this is something that you are an expert in. So this might be a big question to ask you, but as a creator, like all of us creators are looking to grow our channels through analytics, especially, how will we get started doing that?
Sure. I mean, analytics could have, it's like when you're in a game and you're very deep and you're learning, there's like 58 different menu options. Analytics has like over 200. So I
Mm-hmm.
completely understand how confusing it can be. So I usually tell people there's a few you should focus on. And one of the most important is something called AVD or average view duration. But there's a couple of predecessors before we get there.
Okay.
There's something called impressions, which is just when YouTube shares out your content to anyone. That includes if I share it through links, if I share it through different sources. So impressions are like your first understanding of, does my title, does my description, does what I even say in my YouTube video resonate with an audience that YouTube can identify? If you're getting impressions, that's step one. Next, if you're doing long form, is your impressions click through rate. How well is your thumbnail doing? Now, I know that that tends to be a battle most of us struggle with, but thumbnails are that thing where when you finally figure out your style, and every style is different, it makes all the difference. So my first bit of advice would be look at your impressions. Am I getting any? If not, that's where we need to focus first. That could be your title. That could be how you're sharing it. Are you making shorts that could redirect to it? It's called related shorts, not the same shorts. So there's a lot of strategies you could do for impressions. If you're getting a lot of impressions, let's say we'll give a nice big round number, 10,000. 10,000 impressions is 5 sold out Broadway shows. So if YouTube has showed it to that many people and only like 0.2% click through, that means that your art didn't convert people to get through and watch. Now, if you have a high amount of impressions and a high click through rate, but low views, well, your video may not have an engaging hook. You can see that in your retention report. So those are the first three I'd tell you: impressions, click through rate, average view duration, because that goes into YouTube's overall want of viewer satisfaction.
Got it, got it. So I would like to dive in a little bit more to this to like break
For
it down for
sure.
people who maybe aren't as familiar with like the YouTube world or etc. So like you were saying, impressions is just like, people kind of like looking at your content, right? Like getting a glance at it, whatever. And what happens after is how you interpret what you need to improve on.
Correct.
So, given that, so what you're saying is that if you have, well, if you don't have impressions, first off, what should a creator be doing? Just kind of rework everything?
Sure. Usually, a lack of impressions. YouTube is a very literal system.
Mhm.
If anyone has familiarity with, AI, it takes things incredibly literal. It doesn't get nuance well. So, if we're playing a game, the game title should be ideally in the first part of your title. Then later on, you should do what you're doing. If you're playing Pokemon, maybe you're shining hunting, and all of a sudden, YouTube has a better understanding of what that means. If you're playing Fortnite, maybe it's a specific map because there's interest in those things, right? If we are doing, DIY vlogging and we're talking about how to sew, there's that. So the more data you give, the better it can understand what you're having or talking about. And that goes for shorts and live streams,
Mhm.
though people usually just focus it on normal videos.
Oh, got it, got it. So, shorts, live streams, and normal videos with that as well. Also, on a side note though, with specific data with your titles, would that also apply to your caption as well, where you could put the keywords to
Yeah,
get more data?
y
Mm.
absolutely. So if you're doing a video, even saying it within those first 30 seconds, YouTube uses your, like, captions or what you say in the video, because if Cat's like, "How to earn $1,000,000," but in the entire video you never talk about that, YouTube's smart enough to detect, "Hey, why did you call it this, but you never say it in the video?" That doesn't seem right. Not that you would
Got
do
it.
that, but just an example.
Thank you for the clarification though, because this adds a lot more context to creators who are trying to understand why they're not getting as many impressions as they would hope for in their long form content. So going into that then, so let's like using your example, you have 10,000 impressions with, so beyond that, like you were saying, if you have high impressions, but you're not getting a good click through rate, the strategy to improve is to improve the thumbnails, right? Would titles be
Correct.
included as well?
It could be. You
Okay.
should look at where your traffic sources are coming from. So on YouTube, all the traffic sources are like home, the
Mhm.
homepage. So the front page of YouTube is something called browse. There is also like subscription feed, which a lot of people are aware of. YouTube added into the subscription feed most relevant and most recent as an option. So most relevant would be what you as a viewer want to see, not necessarily what we as creators want to see. And then there is suggested, which is those videos on the side. So it could be on the side of it, it could be the up next video. So those are some of the places you should see where am I getting impressions? Because you what you could see, and this is something you people don't often know about YouTube, it averages out. So it takes your high end and your low end and gives you an average. If you're back in school, you may know of a curve. We all appreciate the highs and the lows. So give us an average curve because some tests are too hard. YouTube is constantly testing your content in that same way.
That is so interesting. I did not know that. That is actually so interesting. Thank you for dropping this gem for us. Wow. Okay. So you mentioned as well, high impressions and a high click through rate, but low views equals you need to fix your hook. So, what are some tips you have for creators to improve the hook if they have a situation like that where they're having the high impressions, high click through rate, and the views aren't showing?
Sure. So a lot of times when I say hook, people
Mhm.
assume audio, but visuals matter just as much. Like if I am going into a gameplay stream and it's 40 minutes of talking and 20 minutes of gameplay, then the value isn't matching, right? But if it's the opposite, what I've noticed is sometimes, especially for, VOD or recorded content in a live stream like we're doing, you have a little bit more grace and leeway because the chat is so understanding. But if I told you how to grow on YouTube in 6 minutes, and then it's 5 minutes of me telling you about my pet fish behind me and 1 minute of YouTube tips, you'd probably be that could have been a minute video.
Got it. So your tip for creators is to speed up the intro, get to the point quickly.
Yeah, and also try to surprise them in ways that they may not see coming. A lot of examples of that could be you could maybe show right away a preview of what you're trying to achieve, right? So if you are doing different kinds of content, maybe show them a preview of some of those best moments so that they know what they're looking for later on.
Speaking of this one, because I do see a fair amount of creators who do this, they'll do like if they're doing a gameplay, they'll do horror game, right? They'll do like highlights of like the jump scares and then they'll get into it. Do you have like a length recommendation for this? Like 10 seconds, 30 seconds?
So it depends on what content, because
Okay.
on YouTube Shorts, you have 3 seconds to hook someone in. So if you wait too long, you may not get their attention. But keep in
Okay.
mind, YouTube Shorts are from 0 seconds to under 3 minutes, and that's the 9 by 16 vertical.
Mhm.
But if you're doing like long form, I would tell you what YouTube says. You have 30 seconds to hook them, and that doesn't just mean with what you say, it's what you show.
Got it. Got it. That is actually very interesting as well. So Daisy has a really good question. I think it's very relevant to what we're talking about right now. But
Sure.
this is about videos that like didn't get that much traction in the beginning, but then later gained traction down the line. I've had that with a couple of my videos too, where, it did okay. And then all of a sudden just blew up out of nowhere.
So if you have a video that picks up later, what you don't see is what YouTube is. The good thing about YouTube is they're always testing your content.
Hmm.
YouTube has the longest shelf life of any platform. So if a video picks up later, that's the system working. You ideally, obviously, we all want it to happen at point of upload, but I often tell creators, I've seen people with millions of followers elsewhere, and that never happens. And they wish it did, it doesn't. But on YouTube, it's because YouTube is always testing. And what you may not see is maybe someone in a similar space as you uploaded a video about a similar topic. And then YouTube's like, okay, I need follow up videos. And your video happened to be that follow up. You may never know that video exists, but you feel its impact. And that's something YouTube does so that the community isn't competing, they're helping one another. Because at the end of the day, most viewers just want to enjoy content and they want it from people they know, like, and trust. So if your video picks up later on, it could be that search term is super relevant. A great example I saw of this is right now, Pokemon just celebrated its 30th, and a couple of friends of mine who did like long form Let's Plays back in the day saw a huge bump, even though it's not super relevant to what they were making at the moment, but their back catalog got a boost. It's all based on relevancy.
That actually makes so much sense, especially with the new Pokemon coming out too, because it makes so much sense that everybody who's made Pokemon content is getting like, what, like a tide raises all a rising tide raises all ships type thing.
Yeah.
Because it's popular, now more people's videos are kind of coming up as well. So I love that. That is actually, thank you for clarifying that. Now, speaking as well into videos that maybe didn't gain that much traction, let's say like a creator, because I saw a question related to this, a creator had posted a video and it wasn't gaining as much traction as they were hoping. Like, what would you recommend to that creator to do so that they could maybe correct the video and get some more traction to it?
Sure. I would tell you a couple of things you can do. You can make related shorts. So you can maybe, if you've talked about a topic that you're really passionate about, and maybe it didn't pick up, YouTube calls them related shorts. It just lets you use your existing like new shorts to point to another video. If it's similar enough, it doesn't say it never said same video, it says related. So if it's a related topic, use that interest and that boost that shorts gives creators naturally to point to a long form video. Breathe some new life into it. Share it on places that make sense. Don't over promote, don't spam. There's a difference between being helpful and just being promoting.
Mhm.
So those are two things. Also, really analyze the title. Is this title earning me impressions? Did I describe what this video really is well? YouTube has a free tool for certain regions called Ask Studio, where you can just ask it, hey, what would you recommend? Most of the time when I see people use it, it's like, so your title's not exactly doing you any favors. And then they change it and they see more impressions. And then they find out, okay, I'm getting impressions now. Ooh, my thumbnail also wasn't working. So unfortunately, it's not super simple as to a lot of times what I find is you have a lot of impressions, but you don't have a lot of click-throughs. So from YouTube's point of view, again, if you've ever been outside of a store and you see someone like trying to give you their mixtape, then you know what it's like to be sold to. That's how YouTube feels. Hey, I showed your mixtape to 10,000 people. I can't help you that only 30 like the cover art enough to pick it. Now, granted, 30, some people would be thrilled with that views. That's a small classroom.
Mhm.
But, the views you want and the views you get aren't always aligned.
That last line, "The views you want and the views you get aren't always aligned," is so real. Like, every time you post it to the void and you're like, "I think this is gonna get, like, 10K," and it gets, like, 100, and you're like, "Oh, no." So,
Yes.
I would love to dive a little bit deeper into what you were describing because the examples you gave were great, and I would like to pick your brain a little bit more. So you were talking about like titles where the title maybe isn't as great and that there could be like changes made to the titles. Maybe off the top of the head, it's hard to get like a specific example, but like what are some things like a creator could really, besides you mentioned like specifically tagging the title with like the game category and stuff like that, any other like key mistakes creators are making with titles that everybody should be aware of?
So YouTube calls this being both searchable and compelling. Most of the times the creator is either super compelling or maybe they're just really search friendly, but the best titles do a combination of both. This is something that I learned from Mark Rober, who was at Adobe Max, who talked about 9 visceral emotions that get people to react. A lot of times I'll see titles that are like, how to build a house. That's great. If I need to build a house, that seems like a great video for that. But it's not going to get me to stop and, click through. But if I told you I built a house only with playing cards and it's a full scale house, I might be a little more enticed to be like, okay, what was that process like? How did they actually do that? And so there's a difference of shock and awe. And it doesn't always need to be shock. Sometimes it could be one of the most popular and most like examples YouTube gives is it's a thumbnail that's a yellow square and the creator says this is not yellow, even though everything we know says it's yellow. And it's one of those, they're technically right, and when you click through you learn more, right? So when it comes to your titles, I often see people are like, again, going back to Pokemon, it's super relevant to the time,
Mhm.
but we could do this with a lot of things. We could do this outside of it. I saw one recently where it's like taking my cat to the vet, he's okay. Okay, then I know the outcome. Why am I clicking through? So a lot of times we accidentally spoil the ending, right? So I've seen that as a common thing where if there's no sense of how does this go, how does this work, it can be both ways. But their core audience may be happy to know the cat's okay. But again, not saying that you always have to try, but if your titles are too like on the nose or say exactly what's going to happen, that's the reason people don't click through. They already know the outcome.
Got it. So to reiterate, like you were saying, right?
Sure.
Thumbnails should be drawing like awe and intrigue or some sort of more curiosity from the viewer, and to give them a reason to click the video. Again, like you were saying, spoiling the ending about the cat. Well, we already know what happened to the cat. They're chill, which is great. You don't really need to see the video for that anymore.
Yeah,
Perfect.
absolutely.
Awesome. There were a fair amount of questions as well about shorts,
No,
and I,
keep them
I do want to
coming.
touch upon shorts because a fair amount of the creator competition is very shorts focused. And I remember when we were talking in person, you were talking about how shorts are very, very slept on by a lot of creators and that it can do numbers for your channels. Which, by the way, to everybody in chat, there was a creator that I was that I mentioned in a previous workshop, but you can grow massive followings with only shorts. She's got 1 million subscribers on YouTube and not a single long form video. All she's
Mhm.
posted is shorts. It goes far. So do you have any like, overarching advice for these creators here who are working to grow their YouTube channels through using shorts?
So one of the biggest mistakes I see when it comes to shorts is that they'll post content that's semi-related to what they do. So if you're doing a lot of long form gameplay, like you got to keep shorts are based hyper on relevancy, meaning relevant to topic, relevant to the time you've uploaded it, relevant to all of it. If I made a short right now, best Halloween outfits, Kat would probably look at me like, we're very early here. Like you're almost too early for this to matter. But come Halloween, it might pick up because I was early. The problem is that I'll see shorts that are either, way too focused on not what the long form is about, which can also be a reason. Well, YouTube's like, well, on your long form, you're talking about this, but on your shorts, you're
Mm.
talking about this. They're two different things. You're fracturing your audience. So if you're making shorts and you're trying to go from short form to long form, if you are in a specific like game you're in and you're really deep and you love that game, find those moments that make you laugh, that make you. I know one of the tools that you're recommending does that automatically for you after you're done streaming.
Yep,
Use those.
Streamladder.
Absolutely, right? So the thing is, when you do that, another mistake I see is people will post one short and that's it. And then they'll wait a long time. What I found is shorts is sometimes more of a volume play because you have to remember people are watching a lot of YouTube shorts. 200 billion daily shorts views is a lot of content. So when it comes to shorts, a lot of times people will be like, I'll post one short a week. Compared to other creators, that can be a lot. I would say experiment. Try 1 to 3 first a day, see how that's going. Again, keep it relevant. Don't overwhelm your existing audience if you've been making YouTube content for a long time, but experiment. Shorts are supposed to be a great way to bring people over. And I saw some questions, can it do it? I've seen that done. However, it's not as many as people want it to be. On average, from what I've seen, if you can get 20% over, that's really good. Because if
Mm.
I told you, hey, 1 out of 5 of your friends wants to, hang out a little longer, you'd be pretty happy with that. But all of a sudden, when it's their audience, they're like, no, it's not enough.
I it's the greed. We always want more. You can always
I'm
want more
guilty of that
views.
too. I look, it's like I said, what we want and what we get don't always.
That that's the lesson I've taken from here today. So there was a question earlier about shorts that I like
Sure.
bookmarked in my brain. But in terms of strategies to get more views for shorts, a popular strategy people always tell creators is to loop your video. Do you
Hmm.
think that's effective?
Unfortunately, it is. I've seen enough channels that do a loop. We like when thing as creators, it's one of those things that compels us to watch again. And a good loop will make someone go, wait, how did they do that? And they'll scroll back. On YouTube, they look at that as signals of enjoyment
Mm.
because you're choosing to watch it again. Now, the thing is, sometimes I've seen shorts where the loop is perfect and it didn't do anything because it told the exact story. But if you're creative with a visual hook that you're like, oh, wait, they said that at the beginning because at the end they tied it in. It's not just about looping, it's about looping with a reason for them to rewatch.
I like that thing you said at the end because I do feel like sometimes with like short form content that I see, some creators loop for the sake of looping, and I just like swipe as a user, right? Who's consuming content. I'm like, oh, cool. Okay, go next. But there's some where I'm like, I literally like scrub back and forth because I'm like, wait, how did they do that? Like, let me. And I probably turned up the watch time like 3 times what the original watch time was because I'm like going back and forth like this. So love that about the loops because I mean, it makes sense, right? If it's increasing the watch time, etc., like that is so helpful. So, in terms of shorts posting frequencies, you said start with 1 to 3 times a day. Hypothetically, if there was a, let's say we have a hypothetical mystery established creator, a mystery established creator has, some long form videos out and they're posting relevant shorts. What would be like an ideal posting frequency for shorts that you would recommend to them?
If you're doing what I tell you is test, because what a
Mhm.
lot of people do is they start with one and then they don't see a lot of results. But the problem is when a lot of creators start, they don't just do one piece. I would tell you look at when YouTube, once you have enough data, tells you when your audience is online. They also tell you how much of your audience already watches shorts. So before you even do that, check. I've seen some creators where it'll give you a scale of 1 to 5, 5 out of 5, meaning they're really into shorts. 1 out of 5 means you're going to have to do a lot of work to get them to do shorts. I've seen a lot of creators post lots of shorts, but their audience only is 1 out of 5 into shorts. And obviously, you want 5 out of 5. That's very high interest. So with them, what they had to do was they had to seed the audience in terms of that expectation. Because I'll give it to you this way. If you're going to a buffet and you are there and you love the food, but one day you go in and they completely revamped. It's no longer the buffet you knew, it's something brand new. As a viewer, you're going to have a different opinion of it. You're going to feel different.
That actually literally happened to me. I'm getting like flashbacks to my favorite local buffet in the Bay Area that like completely changed owners. Utmost betrayal as a consumer.
And so, similarly, your audience has some expectations. Some audiences are like, hey, yeah, absolutely, change things up. I'm here for it. Some audiences are those 1 out of 5 on shorts where they're like, I'm not into this. What are you doing? So, learn that before you post because if they're 1 out of 5, that's when you slow drip feed. You give them a short
Okay.
a day, you introduce the concept. If they're 5 out of 5 on shorts and you're passionate and can, another thing, mental health is important. If you can sustain that, then that's good. That is where you can test that higher because my audience is a 4 out of 5 with shorts and they've been very generous in how they respond to them. But again, I've worked with some who have 1 out of 5 and it's been a slow, we're going to make this, we're just going to introduce it day after day. We're going to make it consistent so that your audience consistently expects it.
Got it. That is actually so interesting to note because it always is hard when you're like trying to provide, advice and suggestions, but it's kind of like depends on your analytics, depends on your audience. But it's good to note that, like, okay, so the homework here for everybody, check your YouTube analytics, check your audience, and whether they're a 1 out of 5 or a 5 out of 5 or a 3 out of 5 in terms of short consumption, and then cater your posting frequency to that. I love that. Now, do you have advice for the spacing of shorts? Let's say you are a 5 out of 5, and so your audience loves it and wants to consume a lot. How should you space that out throughout the day?
It again depends how often have you been suggesting. No one wants to feel spammed, right?
Yes.
Like if after this call, Kat, I'm like, all right, we're gonna hang out here, 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 here. All of a sudden, you're like, whoa, whoa. But if I'm like, hey, this was great. Why don't we do this again on this date? You'd be more likely to hang out. And then as we hang out, we learn a frequency. Oh, you're going to that event? Let's hang out there. I'm also going to that event. And so you gotta,
I see
again,
you at too many events.
but it's true. We do see each other a lot, and we never plan it. It's always the
It's
Spider-Man
just
meme.
it's Andrew
You,
again.
but it's genuinely you can't. We all know that feeling of overwhelm,
Mhm.
and so if you've been doing shorts for a while, try experimenting a little bit more. If this is your first short, it can be a lot to an existing audience. But if you have an audience, and this comes from YouTube directly, when you're under 1,000 subscribers and you're looking at your audience, feel free to experiment. That's the fun time where you can maybe ramp that up a little bit more, learn more. And guess what? That audience behavior of 1 out of 5 shorts, that's judged every 28-day cycle. So it can change
Mm.
over time. So if it goes from 1 to 2, oh, okay, my audience is now 2 out of 5 on shorts. Maybe we try 2 shorts a day. And we let it, if you get comments too many shorts, adjust. But again, I'm not telling you to just go for it without using what you have available to you. because YouTube is not a single player experience, but boy, do we make it a single player game a lot. It is a team sport. And like being in communities like yours, having these conversations, that's what helps us make better decisions.
That is so right. So I love that. And then, so if you are a creator who, again, is like posting multiple times a day, is there like a time window buffer that they should be giving between their shorts? Or can you just like drop three and then move on with your day?
I would say from what I've seen work, you want to give it time to breathe, maybe give
Okay.
it 90 minutes, give it some time because YouTube tests every hour how it does in the shorts feed. If it's starting to pop off, like really do it better than expected, YouTube will signal that to you. Give that some extra time. If it's performing normal, maybe then drop another short. If it's below normal, you probably have a little bit sooner than you think.
All right, so noted, right? Like again, like you're like this whole call has been, take a look and then work with this information. So if it's doing well, let it breathe. And if it's not, well, go next, next video to put out. Um, are there any other strategies that creators should be implementing with their shorts, specifically for shorts titling and shorts thumbnails? Because I saw a couple of people asking about that.
So shorts don't have traditional YouTube thumbnails, but they do allow you on mobile to pick a frame.
Hmm.
When you're going to pick a frame, you can look at your analytics and see what moment is spiking. Try to pick from there because that gained interest. Some will put
Mm.
a still frame of a thumbnail they want in the very beginning milliseconds. I've seen some success with that, but I know platforms usually say not to. So I would say YouTube has been pretty gray on that. I've seen it for some creators. So what I will tell you is if you're doing that and you're trying to pick a thumbnail, you're looking at your title. For title, it's more based a lot of times they never see the title unless it's in search. So your visual hook, what you're doing in those first seconds, whether it's text
Mm.
on screen, maybe it's a zoom in to reveal something, those matter. I'll use a great example. A lot of people know MKBHD for his main tech videos, but he has a sub channel, a second channel called Autofocus, which is about cars.
Mm.
And his audience is like, why are you always coming out of the brush? He does it and he's randomly like coming out of a field. He
Oh,
looks, but you see, you laugh, but then it guys like they're like, why are you doing this? And it makes the audience ask a question. I'm not saying you go to that extreme, but it could be as simple as a zoom. Maybe you show something in front of you before you're doing it. Focus on visual and audio hooks. Too many times people just talk directly to camera and then without any text, they can't see what you're saying. Without anything interesting, it's very easy to just swipe away.
got it. That actually is so interesting. You mentioned the fact that like not everybody sees the title. So that,
Yeah.
that isn't even the biggest focus. That the things that people see, which is the visual and the audio right in the beginning, is the most important. I love that. Thank you for providing that information. Another one that people were kind of mentioning about like shorts and YouTube content as well is quality versus quantity. Where would you put the priority? And this is between both long form and short form. Like,
So there's two schools of thoughts. Are you talking about technical quality or quality of the actual experience? Because technical quality is having good lights, good mic, good audio, right? But then there is quality of experience, which goes into what YouTube cares about. YouTube has this thing called viewer satisfaction. What does that mean? Well, not only did they click through the video, did they like it? Did they want to watch more from you? Did they watch a long period of time? Now, here's the thing. If you're streaming, you already know how to produce long form content to a certain extent. You know how to keep an attention span. But when it comes to YouTube, it's not only about keeping an attention span, it's making them want more, right? Like if I have someone who joins a video one time, that's a great experience for them. But if they never come back, that says something to me as a creator. If
mhm.
they come back because they're like, hey, I like that discussion you had, and I wanted to see the next one, that's satisfaction. They were satisfied. So when it comes to creating content on YouTube, when it comes to quality over quantity, YouTube looks at it twofold. Is it quality to us or quality to the audience? Kat, how many times have you heard someone say, and I'll ask you, chat, I made this video, I just threw it up, and somehow it did really well. I didn't even put that much effort into it
Actually,
because
if I had like a dime for every time somebody said that, my boba for the year would be paid for.
so the thing is, we're not really great at picking quality to we know what we think is quality, but our audience has different wants and needs. Sometimes what they consider quality, we're like, that one? I didn't even put effort into that one. So sometimes what that signals to us is that we might be overdoing things. And it's okay to take a beat, that the quality we have in our heads can only be as good as the videos we publish. Published videos beat those perfect videos every time because a perfect video isn't guaranteed to see the light of day. I have so many friends who I've known are working on videos for 5 years, and I'm like, when's it coming out? And they're like, next year for sure. And I'm like, I really hope it does. I have a friend who she knows I've been kind of, she knows me very well. We've known each other a long time. She's been working on a video for 6 years. And I told her, what if when you publish it, you know, it doesn't meet your expectation? She goes, I haven't thought that far ahead. But that can be a trap. So my fear is when people go quality versus quantity, I do think quantity by improving 1% over time can lead to quality. But what we often think is quality can sometimes take so long to produce, it can harm your channel and what the viewers take as quality. I'm not saying that what you believe is right or wrong, because a lot of times you are right as a creator. But I only fear that quality sometimes can be an excuse not to hit the publish. And I've been very guilty of that.
I the amount of people feeling called out right now is so funny. That
Oh
last
no, this is
everybody's like, "Oh no, you're calling me out right now, Andrew. Oh no." That is so true, right? Because like at the end of the day, if you're weighing one or the other, if one lets you post and the other one doesn't, well, what matters is like the post because at the end of the day, I don't know, like I could have invented like fire in my room, you know, but if I never told anybody else I invented it, that who knows, right? That never happens. So yeah, what Rankum said, Andrew literally said that, you know, like the as you were saying, right? As you're posting quantity, the quality eventually will go up, hopefully, right? As long as you're I feel like if you're posting consistently and you just make an effort here and there to try to learn something new to make your video better over time, right? Rather than like an out the gate perfect post that 6 years later might not happen. We'll never know. Hopefully it comes out though.
She is in the animation genre, and if you're an animator
Oh,
watching this, you have different struggles. I hear you, I see
mhm.
you. I will say though that there's a lot of content you can make in between that big piece you're making. YouTube actually has a strategy for that. It's called hero, help, and hub content. Hub content is your regular scheduled streams, your regular scheduled videos, what people come to know you for. Your help content, that gets people in the door. You asked me like what quantity versus quality. Another problem I see people have is they have a lot of window-based content. What do I mean by that? I can see what you're doing, but you haven't given me an entryway in. You haven't given me a way that I, as a new viewer, feel I can join this conversation. And I think we've all been
Mm.
there. And like the best people are like, I see we have a lot of people joining. Thank you for joining. Thank you for joining us this long. You gave us your most valuable resource, your time, right? But then we also have been in places where it's like you're trying to get in, they're not really opening the group up for the discussion, and it just feels bad. So a lot of times our content can be too focused. A title I saw the other day was part 84 of a game that is not really part based. Like they were playing Tetris. Like I'm like, why do you have part 84 in the
Wait,
title?
what?
Right. That was my question. I'm like, part
Oh.
84, because like it stood alone. As a viewer, I clicked through. I didn't need to watch the other 83 parts, but sometimes we do that to ourselves, where we'll accidentally put a barrier to entry that we didn't realize was causing problems. We create a window into the content, but not a door the audience feels they can walk through.
Wow, that makes so much sense. So going into well, yeah, that person was consistent. They were. So going into a little bit more about that, how could creators look at their content to see if they might have accidentally created a barrier to entry?
Sure. One thing I would tell you is when's the last time you watched your content as if you didn't know what you were doing, as if you've never seen the creator before? I talk to people and they're like, well, it's obvious what I'm doing. I'm like, I challenge you. Go to a place where you're not the person in charge and see how easy it is. And most of the time, you have the rare 1 out of 10s. But,
Mhm.
you know, 9 out of 10 doctors agreed that this is not working for you. That 1 out of 10 doctor might be right. I mean, 1 out of 10 doctors thought smoking was bad back in the day, so we can't discount them. But I'm saying majority of the time, what I find, and I've been guilty of this too, I've realized, hey, I'm doing all this high level content that I forgot that unless you know what I'm talking about, this means nothing to you. And like Kat, this conversation we're having, you open the door to everyone to
Oh,
have these feelings. And you got to respect the people that prop open the door and you got to remember them. So everyone gets some W's in the chat for Kat as
oh,
well while we're
thank
at it.
you. You're
But
so
like
sweet.
that, but that matters because we all know what it's like to feel like we're not welcome somewhere. And so if you're doing that with your content, just take a step back. What are ways if they don't know me, they don't know what I'm talking about, they don't even know the game, they could easily understand or get to know me? That's something I've told them. And like when I help creators with that, they're like, I hate how simple it is, but how effective it is.
That is so true. And to add on to that, I feel like especially as creators, you are there for every single one of your videos. So for
Yep.
you, it could feel insanely repetitive to be like, well, we're playing a Nuzlocke, goes right into it without explaining what a Nuzlocke is. Like if you've explained a Nuzlocke every single time in your videos, you're probably like, well, like everybody must know at this point, right? No, actually, a lot of people don't know. So like it might feel tedious to you to constantly try to like simplify may not be the best term, but like, you know, open the door like you were saying, Andrew, right? But like to a brand new viewer stumbling onto Tetris Part 84, well, that was their first time seeing your Tetris video. Going into that as well, do you recommend titling or flagging videos in a part system or to like make it seem one off?
It depends what you're doing. If I'm playing a, let's say, a game that's very story driven, then yes. But what might be more valuable than a part number is the actual what is the place I'm in or chapter of the game or where I am in it. I often look at, television traditionally has lots of episodes. Some shows you've got to watch in sequential order or you're lost completely.
Mhm.
But a lot of them you don't. Once you get the gist, you kind of don't need it in a specific order. But so many times I've seen content creators get bogged down by putting it in the title, where if you have the part number in the thumbnail, it does the same thing, right? And because there's like a lot of space, you get 100 characters, which can feel limiting, but it can also be freeing. If you can't describe what's happening in that video in that 100 characters, then you really need to think, if someone knows, or even if they don't, how could I get their interest? Now, the Tetris example, they again, part 84 was their 84th time playing Tetris. Like, and it didn't need number 84. And so it was interesting because I was like, how did they get to this point? Why did they put that there? And I actually joined their Discord because sometimes I like I'm a huge community person. I got
Mhm.
my start with communities. You're nothing without your community. It's the most important
Agreed.
relationship you build on any platform you're on. But the thing is, there's a difference between your audience and your community. Your community are the people who've already said yes to what you're doing. Your audience are people who do not know what you're doing. If you only serve your community, you're talking to people who are in the know. I am a guest right now to your community and your audience. I'm very grateful for their time. I'm very grateful to even be here. But I'm not going to go say phrases that my community is going to love because it'll mean nothing here. So it's about letting them in, getting the chance to speak with them. So similarly, when it comes to what you're doing or when you're trying to, look at your content, trying to do all these things, very important that you balance a lot.
That is so, so true. And speaking of balance, do you have any tips and recommendations for creators who have like an IRL job or responsibilities they're balancing so they only have a small amount of time they could focus on their YouTube channel per week? Like what should
So
they focus on?
no, no, no. I love this question because I've been a 9 to 5 creator. I've had the pleasure and privilege, and I do mean privilege, to go full time in this, and it's not easy. I know what it's like when you're balancing that 9 to 5. What I would tell you is you need to measure twice, cut once. Your time is super valuable. How do you measure twice? Look at your analytics. A lot of times people are so afraid of analytics, but there's a quote by the author Joseph Campbell. You may know him from his work, and if you don't, it's okay. He's the guy that realized that Luke Skywalker, Harry Potter, Sailor Moon all have a lot in common. They're a hero that has a call to action, things like that. The cave you fear to enter holds the answers you seek, is a quote from him. And for a lot of creators, that's their analytics. They're so afraid of them because I've told people, and this is true, analytics are a mirror. They sometimes show us the thing we don't want to see. recently I learned my visual hooks needed a lot of work. Started improving, started putting different visuals. My retention in those first 30 seconds is way better than it was a year ago. But I had to take that pill. So if you're, going back to what you asked, right? If you're looking at that, what I would tell you is those analytics are going to matter so much and that you can't discount them.
Thank you for that. That is a banger quote, honestly. But that's so true though, because so many creators are so terrified of looking at their analytics because it's like, I don't know what to do with this information. And you can learn so much from just looking at it. It tells you so many things. Do you have like a recommendation for a frequency that creators should be checking their analytics?
So there's two school of thoughts. If you're
Mhm.
limited on time, you're doing your 9 to 5, try to check it once in the morning, once at night. Give yourself 5 minutes, look at your video's performance, look at your channel overall performance, and go from there, right? Because if you're a 9 to 5 creator trying to balance creating, you should look. I mentioned measure twice, quite like cut once.
Mhm.
Look at what performed well, what could you have improved. If your hook has a steep drop, if it looks like a hockey stick, that means that your hook isn't effective. It means that there's something, whether it's visual, whether it's audio, am I doing enough to grab their attention? That's what I would tell you to improve. And try that and work it and keep working on it. If you've ever worked out, and if you haven't, it's okay. The way you get better is that you slowly, sometimes you have a spot, sometimes you have someone watch your form. Because what you could accidentally do is consistently do the thing wrong. You could consistently make the same mistake. So I mentioned that this is not a single player experience. YouTube is a community based thing. And you have a lot of communities that are making this conversation happening. And so what I would tell you is don't be afraid to ask in communities. Go to the communities where that's their whole point because they're there to help. There are a lot of them out there. And so I would say, hey, this is what I have. If you are the 9 to 5, or even if you have a lot of time, it's okay to get a second opinion. Again, a lot of people get a second opinion everywhere but their own content because it's so close to us. And trust me,
Mhm.
I've been there. The results I got after getting the help is way more where I wanted to be versus before.
I love that. Like, check the analytics, check to see if there's drop offs because that's where you really need to hone in on improving in those segments and then asking questions to get the answers you're looking for. And speaking of asking questions, we have
Sure.
a little bit of time left to open up the floor to any questions you guys will be having in chat. I was already kind of like peeping and throwing in some stuff people were mentioning as it was relevant. But as we have Andrew here for his expertise, if you guys have specific questions, I would love to go and toss them over to him. So, ooh, this one is very interesting. And the question is posting at your peak views better? Or should you post maybe around an hour before? Hypothetically, if their peak is between 4 to 6 p.m., should they post at 4 or maybe a little bit earlier, like 2 or 3?
I would tell you have to remember, depends how you're posting on YouTube. So if you're using YouTube's default poster, it posts every 15. So it's either 0, 15, 30, 45, 0. That's how YouTube works. So ideally, you want to post a little bit before because YouTube, I don't love how they show this data, but there is some of your viewers are, many of your viewers are, very many of your, like the way they describe it is not great. And I've given them this feedback time and time again. But basically, to answer this question, post a little bit before, at most 30 minutes. And it depends what you count as before, right? Because it's a color graph that goes from light purple to dark purple, sorry.
Mhm.
So if you have like slightly darker purple than dark purple, try to post in that slightly dark purple. Then if you can, if that makes sense for you, try publishing without scheduling. Why? Because everyone uses the default 00, 15, 30, 45.
Mm.
So those feeds get flooded at the same time with content. So that would be my advice there.
That is actually so smart because if you post without like at those, 15-minute increments, that's where most of the content's coming out. So if you post without scheduling, you get that, maybe at 3:09, somebody scrolling. Well, poof, well, your video is in the little off time because you didn't schedule
Absolutely.
it. That is so 5 It's such a bold statement. I love that. Danielle asks where to find the analytics to see the 1 to 5 rating for your audience interest on shorts.
Sure. So it depends if you're on mobile or studio. And I know a lot of people are mobile first, and I love it. I'm not the one who made this decision for YouTube, but if you're following along, you're going to go to your studio. then you're gonna go to analytics. So studio, analytics,
I'm
then
checking for myself.
yeah. Then I want you to go to audience. So studio, analytics, audience. Scroll down to formats your viewers watch on YouTube, and you'll see videos, shorts, live. Again, videos, shorts, live. And then you can go even further into that if you'd like, but that's where you can go right away. Under that is device type, and that can tell you, are they watching videos, shorts, lives? So there's a lot of info there. I currently on my channel have 5 out of 5 for videos, 5 out of 5 for shorts, and 4 out of 5 for live streams. But I started live streaming weekly, and before it was 2 out of 5. So being at 4 out of 5, I'm happy for that, because before it was 2. So look, growth is growth. It doesn't always have to be the exciting move the needle number. That kind of growth matters too. Don't discount those small wins.
Actually, our analytics are exactly the same. I just found mine too, because I've never checked this before until you mentioned it. I was like, well, let me go look what you're saying. It's literally the same as yours. It's actually so silly. I love that.
I'm glad you had that, because I've had some creators who are like, I'm a 1 out of 5 and all I do is streaming. I'm like, we got to work on your, that's a different
Oh,
conversation.
yeah, well, that, like you were saying, that's analytics, right? You look at the analytics and you find out it's a 1 out of 5. Well, how can we bring that number up?
Mhm.
I love that. And this was something that was mentioned earlier, but actually, Dawn literally just asked that again. I was the timing is actually perfect, because earlier you were mentioning how if what you're posting on long form and what you're posting on shorts is not one-to-one relevant, that your audience might have a bit of separation. Would you recommend people splitting into separate channels if that's the case?
Yes, with a caveat. It depends, right? Like if you're a game streamer and you do a variety of games, then that might be what people know you for, and there are game seasonality, right? There are sometimes games are more relevant than the others. If you're a gaming streamer, it may not make sense, especially if like you're just posting VODs, you're posting things. If you're doing two drastic different things, I'm going to give you a scenario. Kat, if we are going to a pizza shop and I'm like, this is my favorite pizza place, you're going to love the options. But the day I go, they've decided that it is now Meat Monday and everything is a meat dish now. There's no pizza. All of a sudden, you're looking at me like, you told me this is a pizza shop. And I'm like, it was a pizza shop. And now we discovered the joys of, that. And as a viewer, it's jarring. And like a lot of times with the what you've taught your audience is I don't go there on Mondays.
Yeah.
So instead of trying to shoehorn that in, consider that second channel, that second restaurant location. Because instead of like letting one do well and one struggle, you're letting both have the opportunity to shine. Similarly, I know that you're a boba drinker like myself. If we go to a boba shop and then they're like, actually, we don't do boba anymore, we're all about different flavored waters. We might like it, but we both wanted boba.
Exactly. Like if we went to Molly Tea and Molly Tea suddenly didn't serve boba again, like milk tea, I would have crashed out right then and there. Okay. Oh my God, Stream is saying you sound like a cartoon character. I think so in the best way possible. Like the way you enunciate is just so easy to listen to.
It depends who you want, but I can do an impression.
Yeah, the food analogy is so funny because this is something that I always tell creators too about being consistent with posts when you post the times. Because there was one time when I was in college and there was one of my favorite restaurants. The dude opened it whenever he felt like it. Like I would only, and it's on the top of the hill. So I would only go there like maybe once every 2 weeks because I would trek the hill for a chance that he kept the restaurant open. I'm not about to do that. So that's the same thing, right? Where it's like your audience will build up over time an expectation of you as a creator. And if you do deviate, you're free to experiment, but sometimes it comes at the cost of your audience kind of being like, well, wait a second here. Like, what's happening? Speaking of experimenting, this is just like a selfish question, right? There's been numbers that I've heard thrown around. What do you recommend is like an ideal frequency for experimentation? A number I've heard is 1 in 5 videos, something like that.
So I come from a filmmaking background where I have done quite a lot in that space. And what the old adage is for like directors and filmmakers is 1 for you, 1 for them, which means when you are trying to experiment, that's your 1 for you. I tell content creators we have a little bit more frequency. I usually say 2 for the audience, 1 for you. That way you're posting 3 times, but also don't make it that far of a leap, right? Because if the leap is too far, right? Like if we're going to our boba shop and they're like, well, tea is just flavored water. Yeah, technically, but it's not exactly what we're expecting, right?
Mhm.
So that's too far of a leap for a lot of people. Similarly, when you're like trying to experiment, like if you're trying to play a game, don't just cold drop an album, right? Don't just be like that. Don't just
Here's my
cold drop here.
SoundCloud.
Right, here's my brand new content you never knew was coming. It can be a lot. So find ways to slowly introduce that, right? If you're a cozy gamer, you've done a lot of Animal Crossing, and you can be like, "Oh, I also like Stardew." Would that be something that interests you? And maybe you're like, I'm gonna show you how I recreated my Animal Crossing island on my Stardew farm. That would definitely get me to click through. I'd be like, how? Right? But you see
Mhm.
how that would entice someone in those two genres, right?
I like that example specifically because it's like you're blending something the audience is already expecting with something a little bit new and different so that you can try to like ease them into the new strategy. And then Rankum has a great question actually
Sure.
about monetization on YouTube. So the general narrative, and we actually we were talking about this too at the Adobe event, but that long form is typically where the monetization comes in, but that shorts is for subscriber growth. What are your feelings about that?
Depends your genre. Uh, for gaming, unfortunately, it has some of the lowest CPMs and RPMs. It doesn't mean it's impossible, but you have to understand the cards you're dealt with, right? So what I would tell you is you're gonna have to make more content in if you're trying to make money in that way. It doesn't mean it's impossible. One thing I found that a lot of gaming creators are afraid to do is put an affiliate link for the game. A lot of games have affiliate programs where you can recommend the game and earn extra income outside of YouTube AdSense. And I know it's spelled sense, SENSE, but if you've been a YouTube creator, you know it's cents like pennies. So I would tell you that YouTube ad revenue is a one way to do it, but on shorts, I've seen creators like Link using the YouTube creator shopping, which requires 5,000 subscribers, or they'll use shorts to go to a long form video that does make a lot of money. So shorts can lead to money. Shorts also is one of YouTube's top priorities to make profitable. So also look at what YouTube's priorities are. They always post them. Shorts is one of them, and making sustainability possible, no matter what genre you're in, is something they're working on. So you can make money in shorts, but you also need, in that case, you need quantity. Quality is great, but they do kind of need quantity if you're trying to make money when it comes to those shorts.
Got it. So again, with the quantity, it's what we were describing earlier, right? Like test it with like, depending if you're 1 out of 5 or 5 out of 5, 1 to 3 a day, something like that.
Yeah.
Perfect. And then the Don also has another great question. This is long form, the stereotypical. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and share. What are your thoughts on that? And if you put it in a video, when?
I hate this because it's twofold. It unfortunately works. I've tried, like, it's the same thing of the amount of times I've seen not putting it in versus putting it in, and they've seen much better growth. It works.
Yeah.
People forget. People get so used to watching their favorite creator, they don't even know. Has this ever happened to you? I see your stuff all the time. I didn't realize I wasn't subscribed to you. I didn't realize I wasn't following you on this platform. Like that happens because the algorithms are so great, because the YouTube algorithm just follows your viewer behavior. Replace algorithm with the word audience. So sometimes what they do is they realize, like, hey, you keep watching Kat every time she goes live. I'm just going to put her in front of you, even if you're not subscribed. You kind of do want that, because if they only show you people subscribed, you're not growing.
Mm. I love that statement of replace the word. Oh my god, I'm blanking with
Algorithm with
algorithm
audience.
audience. That's it. I was like, wait, what was the other A word for a second? My brain just like flat circuited for a second. But that is so true because a lot of people treat the algorithm as some like omniscient being where it's like, ooh, spooky, spooky. It's your audience. It's people at the end of the day that are consuming the content. And of course, there is like a system behind it to push your videos out. But like at the end of the day, focusing on what your audience wants, it's so important. And I hate it too because it sounds so cringe to be like, don't forget to like and subscribe. But like you're saying, people forget all the time, you know? So that is so important to share. And speaking of liking and subscribing, where can people find you?
Sure. So you can find me over. I love that segue. You're really good at that. I have to say, you can find me over at Andrew Can on YouTube or Andrew Can Film on Threads. That's where I usually am sharing all things YouTube.
I selfishly love your threads. Get on Threads, guys. Andrew was talking about community, and everybody I feel like sleeps on Threads, but I
Yeah,
find that you and I feel like have agreed on this, where I feel like Threads is like the best place to build community. It is like old Twitter. That's what
very
it
well
feels like.
said.
So thank you so much for coming on, Andrew. And guys, don't forget to go check out Andrew, like he was saying, on his YouTube and Threads. Andrew is an amazing resource for just creator education in general, but especially YouTube. Such amazing, amazing stuff that you've done throughout your career and great education and knowledge you've provided to all of us. So can we get some W's in chat for Andrew, guys? Thank you, thank you, thank you, Andrew, for coming on. I appreciate it.
Thank you all for having me.
And with that, thank you everybody for coming to today's episode of the Creator Accelerator Program. This is now on to week 2. Dun, 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 dun. And we have 2 more amazing speakers coming on for the rest of this week. We have tomorrow, Mastering Editing with Maxer. And let me just throw this up actually on this other monitor so we could go take a peep here. We have Mastering Editing with Maxer tomorrow, and then going live on multi-format success on YouTube with YouTube Strategic Partner Manager. So this is very, very, very exciting. And again, by the way, please don't forget, you can still go and sign up for the Creator Accelerator program if you have not signed up already. It is again pinned to the top of chat, but it's blerp.com/creator-accelerator. You just click this join waitlist link to go and sign up, and then you will fill out a form to sign up, and you will wait for your acceptance email. It might get sent to your junk or your spam, so make sure you check your junk and spam in case it ended up there. It will be an email from Blerp, and then it will give you a link to onboard onto the Streamladder, which is where the leaderboard will be hosted. So this is week 2, but we have more weeks of exciting content coming out for you guys. And if you want to see this video or if you want to access it later, the VOD will be available on my channel, but also don't forget on Blerp's YouTube channel, these are also all going to be consolidated and updated there with a little bit of editing. So if you are in different time zones, again, like plenty of time to go check out the content. It's not going to be lost into the void, thankfully. But yes, so thank you guys again for being here. I appreciate all of you guys so much. And big thanks again to Blerp and Streamladder for their Creator Accelerator program and everything they're doing for us creators. So with that, I'll